Devil in a black cloak, street gospel, light of the temple. Sword swing, killer live from the ghetto. The hood messenger, let them know hell's close. Black burial, the devil in a black cloak.
Yo, what is up? Welcome to the Street Gospel Podcast. I'm your host, Dave One, and this is episode number 28. I mean, getting up there now. We're getting up there now. I think we got a total of 32 episodes, so definitely appreciate everybody subscribing. We got a lot of new subscribers checking us out on all the podcast platforms, checking us out on YouTube at Street Gospel TV. So be sure to subscribe, share, get the word out for us. I mean, we really appreciate it. One other thing, too, is I wanted to share, if you're interested in being a sponsor of the show, we're opening that up. So email us, DM us, let us know. We are opening up sponsorships for the show. We can kind of do a you help us, we'll help you kind of deal. So definitely a good thing. If you caught our last episode number 27, it was with Anthony Trimino. He's running for California governor. Solid guy, CEO, grew up in Southeast LA. Good story. Bottom line, good story. So even if you don't agree with maybe his politics, his story is a great story. And you know, the Street Gospel Podcast is the story of coming up. That's what we're about. So be sure to check that out. But today, man, been working on this guy for a minute, bro. I mean, finally got him locked in, and I think he has some good stuff, man. So, I got to play a little jams, and I always put on a song that I think will relate to the guy. So, we did a little stuff back in the day. So, I was in the band. He was in the band. And we would play a couple shows together. Different type bands, but showed a lot of love to each other. We had good times. Definitely rocked a lot of shows. I respected him and his brother. Great group, Living Stone. We'll talk a little bit about that. So I got to put the reggae vibes on. But this guy right here, he is a native of Riverside. If you know where Riverside is at, that's in the Inland Empire, SoCal. Got his good and bad side. We'll talk about the bad side in a minute. He's a father. I mean, he is a brother in the Lord. Us all around good dude. But he's a doctor. I mean, a doctor. I mean, when you think about that, it's no joke. And this is not like a doctor of chiropractic. You know, it's not a foot doctor. This guy's a doctor. We'll talk about that in a minute. But without further ado, I want to welcome to the Street Gospel Podcast, Dr. Mario Rocha.
What's up, man? Glad to be here. Glad to finally make it out.
You made it, man.
Yeah, man. It's been a while.
Finally got you here, bro.
Yeah, man.
It's good to see you, man.
You too. It's been a minute.
I think it's got to be at least like 6-7 years since I seen you, like face to face, right?
Yeah. It has to be in about that time.
That's the crazy thing about social media, man. Social media will, you won't say anybody face to face, but you still kind of in their life and know what's going on.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously, when we first met, we met at a church, and you're probably going to school back then, right?
Yeah, I was probably going to school. I mean, it's been a crazy journey, but yeah, I've been on and off going to school pretty much most of my adult life, you know?
That's a trip, bro, because, I mean, school is kind of, I've been going off and on for a long time, man. Right. I mean, I'm going to, get my degree, and but it took longer than I anticipated. I don't know. I mean, obviously, did you like school?
Yeah, I like school.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I hate school, man. I wish I got it, but when it started getting to the English and the math and the chemistry, I was just kind of like, yo, this is way above. I think I'm a smart guy in a lot of areas. I did really good in history and stuff like that, but when it came to stuff like math, I was just like, yo, just let me just get my my little degree right here, and I'm gonna bounce. I I don't need to get my bachelor's. I don't need to get my doctorate. Let's just let me get out. But
I hear you. Well, that's why I'm a psychology major, because I can avoid all the
other stuff that you don't need, right?
And all that stuff, man.
My buddy told me that the other day. He said, I said, bro, how did you get past all the stuff, bro? Like he was like, look, man, I go to my counselor's office. I told her, look, I don't need this math for what I think he's a socialist, not socialist. What is it again?
Social worker.
Yeah, he's a social worker, socialist. Right. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, and then he was telling me, he goes, yeah, I would just go over there and tell them, I don't need that, and they would just kind of like we would figure a way that how he can pass, right?
Exactly.
But you grew up in the Riv, I mean Riverside, and you know I'm very familiar about Riverside. Frequent that for a minute, and it has its really, really nice sides.
Yeah,
right.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
you go to the Orange Crest, Wood Crest sides, right? Beautiful homes.
Yep.
I remember my daughter had some friends up there, and I'd be like, "Yo, what the heck?
Yeah.
I didn't even know these big old ranch style homes and stuff are up here."
Exactly.
But then I would frequent more by like Johnny's Burgers and stuff down there.
Yeah.
And in those areas, it's a little different, right?
Right.
I mean, you grew up in.
I grew up in Casablanca. Yeah, that's where my family's from. Little neighborhood right there. Johnny's Burgers. That's our spot.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I grew up. You know, a lot of gang violence, a lot of, you know, the story, drugs, you know, prison, all that stuff.
I saw a picture. I don't know if it was you or your brother that posted it the other day, but you look like a little thug, man, in those old pictures right there.
Yeah.
Were you headed that way? Were you in the lifestyle? Or is this a family thing?
You know, it's a family thing for sure. My grandfather was a heroin dealer. So when he came up, you know, and when all that prison gang stuff started, and he spent a lot of his life in prison, and, you know, again, that's what I grew up around.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's definitely a family thing. It's definitely something that, you know, it was a path I was starting to head down for sure.
Right.
But a lot of little things started happening that kind of stirred me in different directions. But, yeah, I mean, definitely. It was crazy times. I mean, it was the 90s back then. You know how that was.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah, it was rough.
So what steered you away from that lifestyle? Because if anybody's seen that picture, you know, white T-shirt wearing, got the hat on.
Yeah.
You look the 90s, you know, inner city homeboy looking kid. But what was some of the things that deterred you a little bit from going that route?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few different things. One is I had my parents. My parents were solid, and they went to church. And my mom especially, she was like, she was really strict, right? So a lot of times I'd be more afraid of my mom, what she's going to do, than what was happening in the streets, right? So that was always in the back of my mind, the right and wrong kind of thing, right? Where some of my cousins, the people I grew up with, they didn't have that. They didn't have that structure. They didn't have that teaching to say, hey, don't do this, don't do that, kind of thing, right?
Did you realize like your household was different than everybody else's, or you just thought everybody else was the way you were? Because I've talked to some guys and they're like, I thought everybody had like a mom and dad, and we had dinner and they talked to us. And then he goes, then you come to realize it's grandma raising the kids, or he's living with his tia, or the dad's not even around. Did you think that at that time?
No, I mean, I knew I had like the double side. Like I had my family structure, but all of my family, my uncles in and out of prison, grandpa in and out of prison. And we were always at my grandma's house, which is right in the heart of CB.
Yeah.
So, you know, I saw all of that. I saw how not having the family structure and how it affected my friends, my cousins, stuff like that.
Right.
So it's kind of like I was in both worlds at the same time.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
So how did you figure out that school was the ticket?
It took a while. It took a minute, right? It took a minute. You know, there's a lot of things that started happening in my life, like, you know, just little stuff. I remember one of the first things that I remember happening was I was about 12. I was in 7th grade, and let me try to recall the story, but I was in 7th grade, and in the neighborhood during Cinco de Mayo, there's a little fiesta that they have at the park and all this stuff. So I was there hanging out, and my cousin's best friend, they're super tight, right? And he was there, and we were hanging out the whole day, right? We're just chilling. My cousin had a new girlfriend, so he was off with her. So it was just me and him the whole day. We're chilling, hanging out, you know, and it started getting dark. It started, you know, nighttime started coming, and my mom swooped up, and she was like, hey, we got to go. And I was like, no, I want to stay. We're hanging out. She was like, nope, we're leaving, right? So I ended up having to go. He stayed. And then the next morning, my mom comes into my room, and she tells me, hey, his name is Henry Torres. He died last night.
Oh, man.
He got shot and killed. Excuse me. He was 14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, he was in 9th grade. And some other people from a different neighborhood showed up, and something happened. They pulled out a gun, and he ended up dying, you know. And I was with him the whole day.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for my mom, I would have been there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So stuff like that started happening a lot. And it just started making me look at life a little bit differently. Right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that happened was I was a teenage father. And I had my first daughter when I was 15.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so I was a young kid, 9th grade, had this huge responsibility. So just slowly but surely, I just started like choosing to stay in, right? And then I got, my parents were like, hey, we'll help you out, but you got to stay in school. That's the only way we're going to help you out.
Right.
So that was my motivation.
Yeah.
Right. Like, okay, I got to stay in school, or else, you know, I'm going to have to get a job and figure stuff out on my own. Right.
Right.
So they allowed me to play sports. So that was a big thing. And it was crazy stuff that would happen, man. Like, I was playing football, right? And it was after school, bell rung. And at that time, we had a bunch of people from our neighborhood at my school. My cousins. I mean, there was a gang of us, right? And there was a little rival neighborhood that would come to our school, Hillside, right? and we're always getting into it with those guys, right? So anyways, it's after school, the bell rings, and they're like, hey, we're going to go out back, you know, all my cousins, people from the neighborhood. And I'm like, man, I got to go to football practice, you know? So they're like, all right, cool. I go to football practice. Come to find out, there's a huge rumble. Oh, man. I kid you not, about 20, 25 people from my neighborhood got kicked out of school.
Wow.
Yeah. And my cousin included. 2 of my cousins got kicked out of school for that, you know, fight. And I was at football practice, right? So just stuff just kept missing me the whole time, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it just really started planting seeds in my mind, like, is this the path I want to go down, right?
Was your parents talking to you and saying, hey,
oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you sound like the typical guy that's born in the neighborhood, right?
Right.
Guys that are born in the neighborhood typically don't have to get jumped in or anything. You're just
right.
you like kind of inherited in the neighborhood, right?
Yep.
I mean, was there any point? I mean, you would think like maybe your parents go, let's move out of the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, I actually lived like right outside the neighborhood, so I could walk there.
Right.
I could walk there, but I was far enough away where like certain stuff would go down and I wouldn't hear about it till the next day or something like that.
Let me ask you this. This is funny, right? Because when you say you live outside the neighborhood, we're probably talking blocks, right?
Yeah, blocks.
Blocks, right? What's crazy about that is you get a couple blocks out of your neighborhood, and you're almost in a different world.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
My parents used to say that all the time. They used to say, we never went outside of our neighborhood. It was always right here.
Right.
And when they would go and venture out, go down to the beach or something like that, it was like a whole new world.
Right.
Right. It's a trip how when you're just raised in your small little neighborhood. I mean, it goes back generations, but if you don't go out anywhere outside of that's all you know.
Right. That is all I know.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. So, yeah, that was a big difference, just being blocked out. Right.
Yeah.
So, again, that was one thing that saved me too, because I wasn't in the street every day. Right.
Was your father on you guys? It looked like your mom was chasing you in the park, but was your father on you guys?
Yeah, he was pretty strict too. He was a National Guard,
Right.
full-time kind of military guy. So he was gone a lot, but when he was home, yeah, pretty strict, and they talked to us a lot about the neighborhood. Like, hey, all it takes is just one time and you're gone.
Right.
Right. Whether it's prison, whether it's death. And again, the 90s at that time, it was just popping.
It was off. Yeah.
You just, walking down the street and you could get shot. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that's something that they planted in my head. Like, all it takes is one time and you're gone. And you need to think about what you're doing and who you're hanging out with and all that stuff. So, again, all that stuff was in the back of my head. But in the front of my head, I wanted to be out there, right? I wanted to be like those guys,
Did you have the conscience always, the angel and the devil? So the neighborhood and your mom's voice, your dad's voice, God's voice be like, hey, man, maybe that you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, all the time. And, again, that was something that I saw a difference between people, like my friends and me. Like, I would always think about it. Like, hey, what? We should think about this. And they're like just going for it, right?
You were the smart guy in the neighborhood. Hey, we probably shouldn't do that. That's not the best strategy here.
Right. Yeah. So, that was always a thing growing up. And again, I always felt like I didn't belong too.
Yeah.
Because I had this good side, but then I also had this other side, and I never really fit in completely in any area, So it's kind of isolating at sometimes too. I kind of felt like alone because there was nobody like me around, So that was another thing.
How did you get into music? Did music come early for you? Because I mentioned that in the intro a little bit.
Right.
I know you were. Your band was great. I loved playing with you guys. I loved hearing you guys, and you were the lead singer. You seem like if you talk to you off the stage,
right?
You're just like you're a mild mannered guy,
right?
Chill. I always tease you about Rasta vibes, right?
Yeah.
And then, but on stage, you had a great presence. You guys brought it.
Thanks.
Where did that come from? And where did the music start?
You know what? I didn't start playing music until later.
Okay.
I was like maybe 18.
Yeah.
18, 19. But the music influence, actually, I had an uncle who lived up in like Bakersfield area, but he was like a evangelist, and he would play like Christian oldies and stuff.
Yeah.
So he would just tour around, and he would come down and do little concerts and play and stuff like that.
It's funny because it's always the uncle that influence you, right? Especially when it comes to music.
Yeah, exactly.
My Uncle Dan he lived with us for a while, and I used to laugh because Rapper's Delight, my first introduction to rap, which I love, was because my Uncle Dan brought home the tape, Rapper's Delight. And I memorized that thing front and back, but it seemed like it's always the uncle that influences, it could be some bad stuff too, but
right.
but music-wise, right?
Yeah. So that was our introduction to music, me and my brother, who started the band with me. So, it was always something that was intriguing and we liked. So my brother started learning guitar, and that kind of kept him out of trouble and kept him busy. So I was like, you know what? to learn the drums. And then we just started putting two and two together. And I always liked reggae. And my brother was into reggae, so I was like, one day I was just like, hey, let's start a reggae band. And he was like, cool. And we just went for it.
That's dope, man. Yeah, I mean, reggae in the neighborhood, I mean, it's not the most popular, right?
No. Yeah, especially back then.
I mean, yeah. I don't think they get it. Maybe now, but I don't think early in, I mean, it was just, oldies and
right.
And maybe some early rap back in those days. But reggae, I mean, it has a whole nother vibe, right?
Right.
It's just different.
It's different. And I think, it fit my personality well. And, I just vibe to it. And, when I first started growing my dreads, like, people are like, what the heck are you doing, man?
The only guy in Casablanca with dreads, right?
Right. They thought I was just tripping, But, it's something that, I felt like I was a calling, so I was committed to it. And, I mean, we did some good stuff.
It was dope, man. I used to love playing with you guys, man. Yeah. And then when you guys stopped playing, I would text you randomly, hey, you guys still playing? I got a show over here. You're oh, man, we're missing a bass player or something like that. Yeah. It's always the bass player, right? So I'm always like missing a bass player, but definitely was good shows. To me, it sounds like you were busy, and idleness is probably the worst thing growing up in a bad neighborhood, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I would say two things basically. You had parents that really cared, talked to you. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes there's guys that have great parents and they still end up in prison.
Yeah, that's true.
And a messed up lifestyle. But it sounds like you were constantly like parents plus being busy with something, sports, music, something.
Right.
How important is that for young guys in the neighborhood?
It's huge. Like you said, idle time is not good because what are you going to do, right? You don't have money, right? Everybody around you is getting in trouble, right? So what are you going to do, right? Again, you don't have money to pay for stuff like sports. You don't have money to do, things that other kids are doing. So you have to go out there and try to survive. A lot of my friends were surviving. Their parents are in prison, right? So what are they going to do? Just do what everybody else is doing.
Right.
Do drugs, drink, party, get in trouble, try to make money, the wrong way. So, idle time, just you gravitate to it because there's nothing else going on.
Right. I think it's important to find something you love. Like, it's kind of cool that you found music, you like sports, you found education, right. And your education kind of is what propelled you. When I, over the years when I follow you, then it was like graduation, and then you got your doctorate, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, this fool got his doctorate. Like, what was this? Like, not that you couldn't do it, right. But I was like, I think we're about the same age, and I was like, this guy did it. Like, whatever it took, he got it done. I mean, how hard is it really to pull yourself up and get that?
It's rough, man. It's rough. I mean, I think, I took a break, right? So after high school, I got my AA, took a break for many years and went back in my late 20s. And then from there, I went straight into a master's program. So I was about 30 at that time. And then from there, I took, I think, a year off and then went straight into a doctorate program. And it took me a little over 5 years to complete that. So, it was rough because I had to work. I had to support kids and stuff like that. So, really, that's why we didn't do a lot of shows. That's why I didn't have a life, man. It was just work and study.
Right?
Like, I wouldn't sleep.
Wow.
It was crazy. So the thing was, I had a vision. I had a vision and a purpose as to why I wanted to do it. again, supporting my family was one, and giving back was another one, you know.
Right.
So I had a vision, like, if I can do it, then what is that going to mean for everybody else?
Right.
Especially where I came from, right? That was really important. I wanted to show them, right?
Right.
If I could do it, you could do it, kind of thing. And that's what really kind of pushed me through that whole time. And it was a pretty stressful time. There was a lot of personal stuff going on that wasn't good. There was a lot of, again, just studying 24/7, man. It was a lot. And again, with the doctorate, you got to do research. So you got to do your own research, and that just takes a lot of time.
Man, dude. Yes, that's the biggest thing. I like what you said, though. A lot of people don't think about giving back. Right. You know, they think about the first part, which is totally fine. You know, I'm going to support my family, of course. You need to have a career. You need to have something to support your children. But the giving back part, I've had some great guests on here, and that's a different way of thinking. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not saying that anybody that doesn't do that is selfish, but I think it's an added great characteristic that you're already like, hey man, I want to show people that they can do it too. I want to make a difference in my community. My friend Mike, he did the same thing. You know, he went back to Fontana. It's not the greatest area, you know, and teaching at his old high school. And he's like, I just wanted to show kids I was from this neighborhood and that they can do it too, and encourage them and see them off into college. And maybe not even a university, just a JUCO or be a welder or something, you know, whatever, something that make them happy and that they can make it. I think that's a great characteristic that you're sharing there. And you went on to, I saw you started a project because now you work for the county, right? Is that what you're working?
No, I used to work for the county.
Okay.
Yeah, I work for the university now.
Oh, nice.
Riverside, yeah.
And then you started your own project, right? Outside of that, right?
Yeah. So I have a lot of things going on, but yeah, I have my own private practice. I see clients.
So you're not being idle.
No.
Okay.
It's a consistent theme.
Well, what is your doctorate in?
My doctorate is in psychology.
Okay.
In marriage and family therapy.
Nice.
So my specialty is like family systemic trauma, like trauma.
Right.
But I work with a lot of couples now, individual mental health counseling. But yeah, the project is a nonprofit organization that gives back to the community and gives to the youth of the neighborhood. Nice.
And I saw you had like one of your posts you put up. I seen some boys. You're speaking to some young men.
Right.
Are these young guys from the neighborhood?
Yeah, they all grew up there.
Nice.
And the goal is kind of, we teach them the arts, right? Teach them skills as far as like, film, acting,
awesome.
Music, and we're pretty new, but the goal is to eventually teach them these skills so that they can create their own stuff.
That's dope.
Right. And then, they're going to have real life job experience, and we want to connect them to either internships, college, jobs, or whatever, right? Starting their own business, right? Just to get them to be creative and to show them that they can use these skills to enhance their life.
That's dope. I think the biggest thing for kids in the neighborhood is to see somebody that made it, right? And then a little help, just a little push to say, okay, because maybe they don't have anybody at home that's going to give them that little push.
Right.
Maybe they don't have no examples in their whole family, but to see a guy like, I assume they probably try to run game on you a little bit or get over on you here and there, and you're like, I come from where you come from. You're not getting over on me, man. This is how we're going to do it. Right.
Yeah, that happens sometimes, and again, but, kids, if you show them respect, they'll respect you. And, again, the whole purpose of it is to equip them. So, a lot of them are open to it. And, again, we're pretty new, so we're still trying to sell it to the kids.
What's it called?
Project 57 in
Project
the
57.
Empire.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a great thing, man. Like I said, young men in particular need that.
Right.
I mean, our young men are just they don't have many examples.
Right.
And when they get older, what I've found is that a lot of the young guys is they make an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't have that in my life.
Right.
You know, I don't know how to be a good husband, or I don't know how to be a man. I don't know how to be consistent or disciplined. Do you find that a lot with young guys where it's just like, I don't know, and a lot of them might just be like, can you show me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my experience, you know, a lot of times they don't even know to ask for it, right? They're just living life the way they think life should be lived, right? And so the exampleship, a lot of times is big, right? And you know, I said we're trying to sell the program now because a lot of kids are like, this is way too out of my box, like acting, film, like what is this about, right? So I know for me, when I was that age, I wouldn't have went for a program like that. I'd have been like, you're crazy, I'm not going to do that, right?
Right.
So we're trying to sell it to the kids, like, hey, do something different, right?
Right.
But it's the exampleship, because a lot of times I find that they don't even know what to ask.
Yeah.
They're just living life. And you know, I wanted to give you a shout out too, man, because, you know, like you said, we've been watching each other on social media and all this stuff. And I'm like, you know, you're a great example of what a father should be, a husband should be.
Right on, man. Thank you.
And, you know, just, you know, that example is big, and kids need to see that. Right. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you a shout out, man, because
it's a learning process, right?
Right.
I tell everybody, like, I wasn't always this great husband.
I hear you.
It's seasons, right? I wasn't always a great father. I'm sure Cam got a lot of bad things to say about me out there. But it is a learning process, you know, and I think a lot of people, young guys in particular, fail at it and then give up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I was talking to a guy one time, and he was telling me about his daughter, and you know, she's like 15 years old, and he was like, yeah, I don't know what to do with her, man. She you know, she lives with her mother, and I just can't connect, and it's just, you know, it's difficult. She's in that teenage phase, and I just stopped him, and I said, look, man, you need to continually pursue your daughter no matter what.
Right.
Even if she blows you off, because one day she's going to come back around, and she's going to remember that you constantly pursued her and was trying to help her and loved her, and she's going to realize that.
Right.
But if you stop now, the rest of her life, all she's going to know is that my dad gave up on me.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And I just think that I tell people all the time, it's a learning curve. It's a season. You have your kids. You have kids.
Right.
You have them when they're little, and they just so needy. And then they get a little bit older, and they don't need you that much.
Right.
And then they're teenagers, and they act like they really don't need you, but they really do. And then they're adults, and then it's a whole nother level.
Right.
And same with marriage. It's you're young, in love, and then it's you go through some trials, you have some kids, and then now I always tell people we're in another season. My kids are adults, and I find me and my wife are together alone more often. And I told her the other day, I was like, I'm thankful that we like each other. It's just me and you now, right?
That's big. Yeah.
It's pretty insane, man. But what a great project you have, man.
Thanks, man.
And then what great help that you're helping people in the mental aspect. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I was talking to my mom the other day about having you on, and she said, that's good. We need to talk about those things. And I said, how come mental health wasn't a big thing, you know, when you were coming up, Mom, or when you were younger? I know her mother, she suspected her real mother probably suffered from some of that.
Yeah.
She's seen some of that in her own family, and we've had friends and family that have suffered from different things like that, and we've seen it. And she had somebody living with her, a sister from the church, and her son was diagnosed bipolar, had a schizophrenia and all this stuff, and she's like, wow, I really seen the toll it takes, not only on the person but the family.
Yeah.
And
sure.
and she was like, we didn't realize it back then.
Right.
Has it always existed to this extent and we just kind of blew over it? Or, is it bigger now than ever? Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Was it always there? And
Yeah.
we just never identified it, I guess, is the right thing, right? We kind of shut it down, like either the person's crazy, or keep your problems to yourself.
Right.
And now, was it just as big then as it is now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any research on it, but I would say, yeah, for sure. I mean, the field of psychology has been around for a while, right? And people, again, way back in Freud's days, they're going to seek help and stuff like that. And, and even before then, right, there was suffering, right? And really that's what mental health is, it's suffering. It's going through the difficulties and challenges and not having the coping skills to go through it. And again, there's also a biological component to it.
Right.
So, some people, there's just biologically, something is not clicking, or they're not getting a certain amount of hormones that they need, right?
Right.
And that happens, and a lot of times we have this stigma about it, but we got to remember the brain is an organ just like every other organ in our body, right? So if I'm having trouble with my body producing insulin, right, I'm going to go to the doctor and get that fixed, right? And if there's something wrong with the chemistry of my brain, all of a sudden that's kind of taboo, or that's something bad. But it's just like every other organ in your body. It can malfunction just like everything else. So there's professionals out there that specialize in that area, and it's important to go there. But I think you're right. I mean, growing up, I know nothing about therapy.
Yeah. It's wild, because even with my friends that went to Afghanistan or were in Iraq, and I think about them, and some of them have PTSD, right?
Right.
And so they identify it, and I was thinking, like, well, my Uncle Sonny was in Vietnam, or my father-in-law was in Vietnam, or this guy was in World War II, and they never really identified the things these guys go through, and the PTSD, right? And either they covered it up, or buried it in anger, or even in my uncle's life for a long time in drugs, and or even in World War II days. I mean, alcohol, big time, right? Just to kind of drown it out a little bit.
Right.
And now it's like identified, and we're saying, like, yeah, I need this therapy. How prevalent, even in people with any sort of trauma, is the PTSD in a lot of people's life, known and unknown?
It's there. I think we all have trauma to a certain extent, right? Whether it's PTSD diagnosable, that's another thing, right? Because you have to meet certain criteria to get that diagnosis. But we all have trauma, right? And again, you're talking about the people who went to war and stuff like that. But again, growing up in our neighborhood, what was that like, right? I mean, I tell this story that, I was given this assignment one time early in my graduate school to remember your first memory ever, right? And I had a hard time with it at first, but then as I started reflecting, this memory started coming back to me, right? And it was like, I don't remember. I was really young. I was in front of my grandma's house, and in front of me was my brother or one of my cousins. They're in diapers, right? So we're really, really young. And there's this guy running down the street, and he jumps into our neighbor's yard, and there's a car that pulls up. There's like a field and then another street. Car pulls up, and they just start shooting at each other. Man. And we're right in the front yard when this is happening in front of us, right? And it's like playing back to me in a movie reel. So I was like, is this real? Am I making this up? So I asked my mom about it, my family. They're like, yeah, that really happened. We were all out in front.
That's wild.
We had to jump down the ground, and that stuff happened all the time. So talking about trauma, if you're in the hood, you've been traumatized,
right?
100%.
My friend tells me these wild stories.
Yeah.
I mean, just blasting on people blasting them.
Yeah.
Homeboys dying in his arms. You know, being with a homeboy like you said for all day, and then you find out he got shot later on in the night, and you know, guys going to prison for life, and he tells me all these stories, and I'm like, man, bro, like this is like, and it's not to say that guys that go to war, you know, but is anything less, but guys in the neighborhood a lot of times that have to deal with that gangbanging stuff, especially in the 90s and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost just as bad, right?
Yeah. I would say it's just as bad, right? And the thing about that is you grow up with it. So it's there during your early developmental years, right? So it affects how you develop. It affects how your brain is wired, right? So our brain can get wired to be addicted to that adrenaline rush.
That's crazy.
Right? And so, again, all that affects our mental health, right? It affects how we behave. It affects how we see the world, right? When we're traumatized, we see the world through the lens of trauma. So we're always on guard. We're always trying to figure out, like, you know, dangerous things, even in situations where it's not dangerous, right?
Wow.
I'm wired to see the world that way. And so, you know, again, if we're not having an outlet, whether it's, you know, some people, you know, religion, God, that helps them work through it, therapy, if you don't have that, then you're just trying to figure it out on your own, and that's tough.
My sister, kind of like you, she has her master's. She sees people and they come to her for therapy sessions and everything. And when I first started this show, you know, we talk about a lot of things. You know, we've had people on here that were drug addicts, you know, that seen a lot of things, that overcame, but they seen a lot of things. And for a second, I thought I was feeling. I had some people that had gave me like some bad vibes about the show. You know, it seemed like maybe I was exploiting people's stories and stuff. So I started tripping on that, right? Like, you know, like I started thinking, like, am I getting people on the show that because I want to hear their sad story and, you know, and exploit that story? I was feeling like that. So I called my sister and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And she goes, you're not exploiting them.
Right.
She goes, the reason why we have a lot of problems in society is because there's nowhere where you can drive up, like at a strip mall, and they say, come on in, tell us your story.
Exactly.
Right? And she's like, people need those outlets. But in society, we don't have those things.
Right.
She goes, and your show provides that. It not only provides a person coming in, but it provides the people that are out there listening to identify with that person. Maybe it's something small, or maybe it's like their whole life. Like, yeah, that's me.
Right.
But how true is that, man? Like, we don't have those outlets in society.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And I think, you know, again, you know, there's a lot of psychology behind that, but, you know, why social media is such a big thing. People are out there putting themselves out there, telling their stories, right, so to speak. But stories are healing. You know, we need to tell our stories, right? And the thing about stories is a lot of times we're defined by our story, right? It defines us, and we're stuck in it, right? And the thing about what you're doing here is, you know, and what I like to talk to clients about is the story's not over.
Wow,
right? You're still writing the story today.
True.
So the bad stuff of the past can actually work together to create a beautiful story in the end.
That's good.
But a lot of times we don't realize that we're still writing today, right? We're stuck. So, and again, that's what therapy is about, to help you see that in yourself, where you get stuck and how you can get out of that, right? So again, that's what's great about your podcast is that people can see, well, if they can do it, I could do it. I can rewrite my story too.
Right.
And that's the power of the story.
Why do people get anchored in their past, man? What do you think it is? I mean, I'm not saying I don't have a lot of trauma. I don't have, I listen to people's stories and I'm like, oh Lord, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to complain anymore about nothing because I've had a pretty darn good life compared to everything that they went through. But what is it that keeps people anchored? I mean, I've had a lot of overcoming. This podcast is a story of coming up, of overcoming. Right. But I know a lot of friends, a lot of people that is just, it's so hard for them to break free from that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of factors to it. I think one is they're not healed, right? They're not healed from that past. So again, what happens, and again, this is only in this is not true for in every case, but this is just a piece of it. But, what happens is we create patterns, right? And so we internalize all these negative belief systems and negative ways of looking at things, like, just a simple thing, like, I'll never get out of the neighborhood. That mindset keeps us stuck. That belief system keeps us stuck. And then we create behaviors to try to cope with that. Drugs, sex, alcohol, violence, stuff like that, right? To numb us from our reality, but that doesn't help us get out of it. We're still stuck in it.
Right. Are you just you're just covering it up? Right. You're not really. I always say you're like burying it alive.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
It's still alive.
It's still alive. It's still in there. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna steal that.
Hey man, just give me credit for that. But I've seen that where people get an issue, a problem, and we all do it, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not the only one. I'm not saying that I don't have that, but you get an issue, you get a problem, you cover it up. And then it's still alive. Yeah. And eventually what happens? Yeah. It unburies itself, right? And it comes back.
Yeah. And, I'm guilty of it, right? And so, we're human beings. And this is learning the process, right? That's the process of therapy, is learning about ourselves. And a lot of times, if we don't learn from it, then we're going to keep running into the same things. Right. And, the emotions and obstacles and patterns in our life will keep repeating if we don't learn. And, again, that's true for me. Even recently, last year, I had a tough year personally, but, I had to dig down deep and say, what's going on? What is my stuff here that I need to start changing and working through even now? Right. So it's always an ongoing process, and none of us are perfect. And there's always going to be things to work on. But again, the reason why we get stuck is because we don't see it, right? We're blocked. And that's why therapy is important, because the therapist is an outside person with a different perspective, and they can see these patterns developing and say, hey, look, these are the pieces that keep repeating. Take a look at that, right? Yeah.
That's I like that, because do you think that sometimes we go to the wrong people for advice and stuff? Because we go to our Thea, or and we think, oh, she's my Thea, she's so good, and they give you the wrong advice. I had a friend that came to me, and he battled with a lot of things, man. It was a lot of trauma, and I think even more than he realized. And I would tell him for years, I said, he would go to people in the church, he would go to friends, he would feel good for a minute, and I was saying, bro, everything that you've been through, I'm gonna be honest, you need professional help. Yeah, you don't need to go to this guy no more. He has all the greatest intentions, but he doesn't know how to deal. What is the difference between going to a great friend, a great family member, which could be very supportive, right, and then, but their capacity is only so much, right? what is the difference when you go to somebody like yourself and really get therapy and really talk it out? What does all that education do for a guy that goes to you?
You know, the difference is, you know, again, you dig down deep. You dig down deep and you start uncovering things that, again, we don't realize how much it affected us, right? And how it's affecting our patterns and how we do things, how we see the world today, how we operate in relationships, right? So, real good therapy is going to have you take a really deep look at you, right? And really start to reflect on the stuff you're covering up, like you said, the stuff you're burying alive. I'm going to steal that one. And, you know, it's going to help you see that stuff's still alive, man. You know, again, because we bury it and we can't see it, we think we're good. Right. But it's affecting how you operate every day, right? So, again, you know, your aunt is going to have good advice, but she's not going to be able to dig in deep like that.
There's some layers there, right?
There's layers there. And therapy, again, is that process. You know, we're trained to learn how to work through that and deal with that. So, you know, that's the difference. And for me, you know, I don't discount advice, right? Take advice, but always remember it's just advice, right? And don't take it personally. See how it sits with you, right? And a lot of times, you know, someone will give me advice, and it's good advice, but it's good advice for them.
True.
It's not good advice for me.
True.
And we got to know how to process that and say, okay, and I don't take that personally, right? If somebody gives me bad advice, even if it's a bad advice, right, I'll be like, okay, I'll hear you out, but again, that's not for me, and I'm just going to go about it a different way, right?
Right. Is the processing thing in your mind the biggest thing? And I say that because a couple years ago, my wife dealt with some things, some depression and some OCD stuff that it was funny because shouldn't say it was funny, but we would kind of joke about it, you know, that she was OCD or she would make lists or everything had to be a certain way. Yeah. And things started bothering her more and more. And the crazy thing about it is she went to her doctor and she's like, I just can't take it. And I need some meds. I've been researching. Can you give me these? And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, that's a good doctor.
He's like, I'm not going to. I love that guy, right?
Yeah.
So I go, I told her, I go, I love him. She still has it, that doctor. But he goes, I'm going to set you up for therapy. I want you to go talk to this guy. And after, we'll see. He goes, I'll put in the prescription, but you don't need it. Right. I want you first to go talk to this therapist. She went one time, bro. One time. And I was a little, and people will probably think, well, one time, come on. You know, I'll tell you what, I was encouraging it because I was a little nervous. Like,
yeah,
I was praying for her. I was encouraging her. And you know, a couple of days turned into a week turned into, you know, 2-3 weeks. Then you start getting into a month and you're like, whoa. And the little snap out of it, that's not working. You know what I mean? The little that, you know, don't worry about it, God's got you. When it's just, you know, she starts crying and different things. But when she went to this therapist, she got it. He explained how her mind works, right? Yeah. And it clicked. And she came, and within a few days, she goes, I realized what was going on in my mind, what was happening. And once it was identified, then I was able to deal with it. She's like, it doesn't mean that I still don't get those feelings. Mm-hmm. It just helped me to recognize, okay, this is what's going on, and this is what I need to do.
Right.
And she got it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And is that true in a lot of experiences? I'm not saying just one time, but is it just identifying it and then saying, hey, this is what you need to do?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And again, excuse me. Yeah, she was in a good space, right? And she was in a place where she can get it, and it clicked right away. Again, it's the same process for people who have really severe trauma. It just takes longer, right? Because there's a lot of different layers to it, right? And again, that's what I work with a lot. So I'm used to going deep into those layers with people. But yeah, I mean, it can happen in one session, right? It can happen in 3-4 sessions, right? It depends where the person's at and what they're wanting to work on. But yeah, it's the same process, right? You have to identify it. You have to see it. Because like you said, I mean, I'm going to keep using it. You bury it alive. You can't see it, right? And it's like, what's going on with me? I don't know, because you can't see it, right?
Yeah.
And once you're able to see it and notice it and then have the ability to work through it, then it's like, oh, cool, I got this.
Right.
Right.
I think that's for everything, right? Every issue we have, you got to kind of decipher it a little bit. Where is this coming from?
Exactly.
How do I need to deal with it? Where it is, what's funny about this is, you know the word, and when I took a class, right? And I loved this class. It was a critical thinking class.
Oh yeah.
Right? And I loved it because it was just think about what you're thinking about to sum up critical thinking, right? Think about what you're thinking about. And it was so cool because in the word, what does it say? Think about what's true. Think about what's good, and kind of, I was like laughing because critical thinking is like that. I'm like,
yeah,
the Bible tells us right here, like this is how we need to think. This is what we need to do. Critical thinking, great. It's a great philosophy. I mean, it's a great study. It's great research, but it came kind of from the Bible. And once I saw like those two together, I was like, yo, this is great. And I've used that, and I've taken the critical thinking and I've taken the word and I said, okay, so when I get those feelings or the anxiety, I have to calm down a little bit and think about what I'm thinking about. Is this good? Is this true? Is this for real? And a lot of times people do not do that, right? They don't take the time to think about what you're thinking about, because thoughts just come in our mind, right? We have no control over that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate, right? And again, it goes even deeper than our thoughts a lot of times. But, I don't know how much time we have to
We're
dive.
good.
But, there's nothing new under the sun, right? The things that, the Bible talks about, if you really dig down deep into it, it's a blueprint of how to work through stuff. It's just, a lot of times psychology, the more I study psychology, the more it's like there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
It's just broken down in different ways.
Yeah.
Just broken down in things so that we can understand it.
Stuff's named or identified better.
Right. And again, this stuff has been contemplated for centuries.
Right.
It's ancient. We're human beings, right? We've been through the same stuff for generations. So if you look back on philosophers and philosophy and all the ancient writings, it's all there. Right?
Yeah.
So, our thoughts are they come from a lot of different places, right? And, for me, how I do, there's different schools of therapy, right? There's different ways of how to look at it. And again, it all leads to the same point.
Right.
But for me, it's all about the relationship, right? You have a relationship to your past. You have a relationship to yourself. You have a relationship to things, right? Drugs, alcohol, you name it, right? Work, whatever.
Right.
And that relationship is all patterned from our early childhood. It's ingrained in us, right? And again, we don't, like you said, I'm going to keep using it. It's buried alive.
Yeah.
We don't see it, right? And so the process of how I do therapy is that understanding the relationship that we have with ourselves and with the world and how that came to be from our past, and learning how to unbury all that stuff and set it free.
Right, because I think we breeze over it, right? And we in the layers of each thing. You know, my friend's been telling me about going to this therapist, and he's been there a few times, and he's like, oh, this week, man, he was touching on this, and I never really got deep on that, but I realized that jacked me up. And then this week he was talking to me about this, right. And I realized, like, yo, that was messing me up too. Yeah. He goes, and then so we started talking, and I was like, he's probably gonna unbury this part of your life too. And he goes, he is, huh? And I was like, he's cracking up, right? And it's just like, you know, all these things, but each week that he's called me and talked to me about it's been better, and he's been different in a good way. Like, that's why I act like this, right? And it's so refreshing, and I just laughed, and I told you, man, you could have got this a long time ago if you would have listened to me. But I'm thankful he did it. But on the other spectrum, I know people that are in their 60s, and never got help for all the trauma, all the things they've done, all the things that got done to them, right? And is there any point in your life where, you know, you just say, it's life's over, it is what it is, and, you know, if I live another 20 years to my 80s, then oh well, I'll just deal with it. I mean, it's not really a thing where, like, older people say, yeah, I should get this, but how important should they do it just for peace of mind in the last, you know, quarter of their life?
Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to, how do you want to write that story for yourself, right? I see clients that are in their 70s, 60s, right? So
that's so good, man.
Yeah. So, you know, it's really up to you. And again, taking the power back and saying, you know what, I have the ability to let this go and to work through it. And it's difficult. Like, you know, again, even now I have difficulties with certain things, right? I struggle with stuff, and so I need it too, right? So again, it just depends on how you want your story to play out.
Right.
You can define your story like that, like, you know, I'm too old, I'm done, I'm just going to ride this out. If that's what you want, that's what you're going to get, right? And if not, then you have the power to change that.
That's wild, man. I would rather, you know, my wife always tells me that the first, you know, 10 years of marriage was a little rough. I hate to admit that, right? Yeah. And I'm like, are you serious? You know, and then she goes, but you've constantly improved. And she's like, yeah, the last half of our marriage has been just great. You know, and I think people give up early, right? Yeah, if I plan on staying with my wife for the rest of our lives, right? We've been together since we were 17, and so we've been together 30 years. 30 years. We'll have to edit that part. I don't want to seem that old. But we've been together 30 years, and we think, like, I think a lot of people think, like, well, you know, I can't change, you know, just let it be, and oh well, you know, and I was like, man, if I'm going to be with her my whole life, then I should change and try to make our life good. That even if we were together, you know, 25 years and I never changed, if I'm planning on being with her another 25 years, I might as well change and make it a good last 25 years.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. And, you know, I mean, that's what it takes, right? That's what it takes to make it good. And, you know, you're right. I think we do tend to give up too soon. You know, I mean, you know, I had a failed marriage. I got a divorce, right? And you know, at the time, you know, it's before all this psychology and getting to this place where I am today. So there was a lot of mistakes, right? But, you know, I think, you know, for me, you know, it's a double-edged sword because I tend to not give up even when I should sometimes. So, that's something that I'm still working on. But it was a situation where nobody was not, I won't say nobody, but a certain person wasn't ready to change and didn't want to change, and there was nothing I could do to do that, right? So again, it's about choice, and you have a choice. And I've seen, just in the past year, man, I've seen marriages on the brink, like we're ready to be done today, right? So much stuff going on, and I've just learned so much about relationships. And again, going back to what's underneath all that and what's buried alive and how it's affecting them. And just man, I kid you not, man, marriages on the brink that are thriving right now.
Right.
They're thriving. And it's all about that choice. Do you want to make it work? Does the other person want to make it work? If you're both committed, then it's gonna work. If one or the other is stuck and they're not wanting to, that's tough.
Are you of the belief that an individual or even a couple, if they really want to put in the work, is there anything that's unrepairable?
No, I don't believe. Hold on, let me get my thoughts together. There's nothing unrepairable. Nothing.
I think that's big, bro.
Yeah,
I think that's big because a lot of people think that there's too much. There's too many. I had my friend Sylvia come in here, and she was telling me of just. I mean, the story was just too much. My friend Richard comes in here. The story's too much.
Yeah.
And both of them are thriving, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah,
I mean, like you think like some things would be unrepairable,
right? And it's not, man. I mean, I think we're created with power, right? We're created with, I'm gonna give a shout out to my boy here.
Nice.
Right? I'm a creator. Right? I'm not a victim. I'm not a complainer. It's a mindset, right? We create. And, I worked with somebody years back, man, diagnosed schizophrenia, right? Homeless, living on the street, all kinds of stuff, right? Hearing voices, right? When I first met them, they were just, in psychosis, right? Yeah. And so working with this person, getting them on the right meds, they ended up cleaning themselves up. They got a job. They're living in a sober living home. When I left them, because I moved on to a different job. So, I mean, if he can do it,
right.
There's nothing.
There's help. If you want it, you can do
right.
it. But it not easy.
Not easy. You gotta work for it, and you gotta have the right help. Again, you have to have professionals in your corner, right?
Yeah. And make the right choice.
Right. Make the right choice.
I like what you said a minute ago of really deciding what you want to do. My wife has a saying, and it messes me up sometimes because she goes, you know what? I don't care what I'm going through. Today, I choose joy. I choose joy today. And I get all like, don't say that. Because then I get all like, you're right. Like, okay, she goes, how are you going to wake up today? Are you going to wake up and choose joy no matter what? Or are you going to not choose joy? And I'm like, oh, man. Like, I don't want to choose joy. I want to choose anger.
Yeah, I hear you.
And but I love that because it's up here, right? I choose joy. I'm gonna have a good day, and no matter, it doesn't mean that nothing's gonna come your way. I think we think like a good day is when nothing happens, and it could be right. But I think a good day is also when everything happens and you manage it well up here.
Right. I agree, and that's the big thing about therapy too. It's hit it right on the head. We're not gonna avoid. Again, in life there's trouble, right? We go through divorces, we go through breakups, there's trauma, there's, you name it, right? And we can't avoid it. It's about knowing that we have the ability to work through it.
Right.
Knowing that we have the ability to overcome, right? And, again, I still struggle with that stuff, even as a doctor, right? Sometimes I'm talking to a client and I'm like, man, I need to listen to my own advice here, right? So, again, I'm not immune, right?
Right.
Well, we all go through it. This is a human experience, but we all can work through it if we choose it.
Right. Is it for men? And is it a machismo thing that we don't want to get help?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that has a big role to play in it. Again, we're taught we have to suck it up and just be a man, I get in that mindset even now sometimes about certain things, right?
There's a balance there, though,
There's
right?
a balance there, right? Because, you do want to push through things, right? You do want to have the ability to work through hard stuff. But like you said, we can't bury it. We can't bury stuff because it's going to repeat. It's going to be under there, again, dictating how we operate. We're going to be in anger.
So
we're going to be in depression, right? And we're not going to know because we're just not seeing it. We're choosing to stuff it down, right?
Yeah.
So having the ability to say, you know what, let me lower my pride and get some help and talk to somebody and work through this. That's going to help you, again, become a better man, in my opinion.
Right. Lastly, man, I wanted to talk a little bit. You're in the church. Family was in the church. I'm in the church. My family's in the church. Within the church walls, and this is not a knock against the church. I just think they don't understand. They're not fully educated. But in the church walls, a lot of times when there's a mental issue, they always point at a spiritual thing, and sometimes it is a spiritual thing. I totally believe that, but sometimes it could be a chemical imbalance. It could be the trauma. It could be even an injury, right?
Right.
But within the church, it's always a spiritual thing, or he, to be honest, he has a demon, or this woman is bound by the devil or something like that, right? Yeah. And I know people mean well, and I mean that in a way of, they just want to see people delivered, and let's pray, and we need that also, of course. But a lot of times it is a little bit more deeper than that, right? It is other things other than a spiritual thing. It can be just a chemical imbalance.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think, in my opinion, I think sometimes, it's important to be able to acknowledge that, there's been things in the church that haven't been okay, and how they dealt with stuff.
Right.
And again, we got to keep it real, right, in order to grow.
Yeah.
And so I 100% agree with that. And we got to get educated. And like I said earlier, right, if your heart is not working right, you're going to go to the doctor.
Right.
Right.
You're not going to go to the foot doctor. You're
Right.
going to go to the heart specialist.
Exactly. So mental health is just as important. Right, go to somebody who knows what they're doing, knows what they're talking about. And again, I will say a caveat that there is some not great therapists out there. There is some doctors that won't do what a wife's doctor did, which, hey, go get therapy. They'll just say, hey, here's your meds, next, right?
Yeah.
So you want to be cautious of that, and you want to pick your therapist wisely.
Right.
But at the same time, I agree. We need to be more open to mental health, to therapy, to professional help. I think it's really important.
And what would be your advice? Let's say anybody out there listening to the show today, and they're battling things in their mind. Their past constantly comes up. Maybe it's a drug issue that keeps just beating them up. maybe it's PTSD, just trauma. What is a good first step for somebody out there that just like, man, this constant stuff in my mind. There's just things that just jack me up every time. What is a good first step for a person like that?
I think the first step is just realizing there's help out there and that you can make a change, right? And so practically, just about every insurance covers therapy now, even Medi-Cal, right? Medi-Cal, IEHP. So you can call your insurance and get a list of therapists that accept your insurance. You could just Google therapists in your area and accepting whatever insurance you have, and the list will come up. Right. So it's available. Go out there and seek it and get it, right? And so, that's my advice right now.
Yeah, I think if we encouraged it more,
right,
I think a lot of people would benefit from that. When I told my wife, like, just go, just, we don't got nothing to lose, just get it. And it's been so relieving. It's been so good. It's just been a great help. She's like, maybe you should go. And I was like, oh man, here we go. But we're
gonna get you in therapy here soon, bro.
Here we go. Start peeling back the layers. What are you burying, Dave? But I think it's a great thing, man. I love your story, man. I love that you overcame the neighborhood, your Project 57. I wish you the best for that, man. I think that'll be a great thing, and appreciate you coming in, man.
I appreciate being here. It's cool, man.
Yeah, I just thought it was a great thing to talk a little bit about mental health, to talk about therapy, and encourage people to get help.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's like you said about the homeless guy, man. I mean, it was it must have been. I mean, it's dramatically life changing, especially for that guy. But even for like my wife that went one time, it was a drastic change. I mean, it was something that was just like made a huge difference in our life. And if anything, I would encourage people out there to get therapy, get help. You can't always depend on the Concha and even the pastor. I think all good intentions. We need prayer. We need God. But I like my sister's pastor. She's has her master's and all that, and does the therapy sessions with people. But her pastor will counsel people and then say, I think you need to go to Sister Diana and book a session with her, because this is above my pay grade.
Right.
And it's true. It's not just because we're believers doesn't mean that we're experts at a certain thing, right? I'm a believer. That doesn't mean I can do plumbing in my house, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we got to steer those people to good therapists that have the best intentions for these people.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not just the drug pushers, but trying to find some layers of where they can help out, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. So that's awesome.
Sweet, man. Well, me and Camo, we got one thing before you split, man, and this is kind of the we like to call it the Furious Five, bro.
All right,
and we asked a few questions and quick answers. I mean, I like to write everybody down in my little book here. So, for Dr. Mario Rocha, question number 1 on the Furious Five. There's one night, and you can play with any reggae band. Be the lead singer, whatever you want to do. What band would it be?
Current band or past band?
Any band. All time.
Have to be Bob Marley and the Wailers, man.
What you going to be up there like doing what? What are you going to be doing?
I'll just probably be, I don't know, man. Either be on the drums, backing up Bob, I don't know.
Something. I think you have like that, what is that thing? And then you just go.
Oh, yeah.
Just it doesn't matter, right? As long as you're on stage with Bob.
If I'm hitting the cowbell, I'll be happy, man.
More cowbell.
Yeah.
That's dope, man. I mean, he's the best, right?
The best.
Greatest of all time, man. And his kids are great, too. That's what's crazy about it, right? All right, man. For anybody visiting, passing through, Riverside. Best place to eat in Riverside.
Oh, man. Shoot. You got me on that one. Johnny's Burgers. You can't go wrong with Johnny's Burgers.
Johnny's Burgers are legit. If you're in Riverside, it's right off the 91, Johnny's Burgers. You can't go wrong. Pastrami, cheeseburger special. Man, sounds so good right now. I might have to drive over there. All right, man. Johnny's Burgers. Question number 3 on the Street Gospel Podcast, Furious 5. Your biggest influence in your life ever, all time?
Man, that's a good one. I'd say my dad, man. My dad.
Really?
Big influence, yeah. You know, he was a military guy. He came from the neighborhood, too. You know, he was a young gangbanger and just changed his life around. And, you know, he set a pattern for me. He set a path for my family. So, yeah, my dad for sure.
Dope. Question number 4, Furious 5. Any goal for the next year?
Yeah. I'm gonna finish a book. I'm gonna put it out there.
Dope.
So to keep me accountable. I'm gonna write a book and finish it.
That'll be dope, man. Definitely. We'll get you back on again. We'll promote the book. What about that?
Definitely.
Last question, number 5. What would it take for you to cut off your dreads? A woman, cash, some other talent, a superpower? Would you cut your dreads for any reason?
You know what, man? My dreads are the superpower.
Oh,
so,
snap. That's a good answer, bro.
I can't do it. You know, I've it's been since 2001, and I had a lot of contemplation. Should I not? And I can't do it, man.
Can't do it? Dreads is the superpower, like Samson.
Yep.
Hey, man, we appreciate you coming out, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate
Definitely
it.
was a good show, man. Dr. Mario Rocha, man. Search him out on Instagram. His Project 57. If you're in the area, Inland Empire, send some young men over there, man. Get involved. Appreciate you coming out, bro.
I appreciate you having me. It's been fun.
Awesome, man. That'll conclude this episode of the Street Gospel Podcast with Dr. Mario Rocha. Be sure to send it to your friends, man. Maybe somebody's out there battling some trauma, some different things going on in their life, and definitely a good listen, man. We appreciate you out there. We out.